we found a really great interview released just a couple weeks ago with from McKinsey, where McKinsey interviewed Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. And if you don't recognize that name, he is actually a world-leading AI expert. He's an author and an investor. And he gave this really, really in-depth and great interview on how business leaders can actually become drive their companies to become AI first, AI emergent companies, regardless of, if they have historically been a more traditional business. And you and I both have been familiar with Dr. Lee's work, his book, AI Superpowers, China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order. That I remember that, a couple years ago being extremely formative for both of us as we were learning more about artificial intelligence and building out the Institute. He has since gone on to become chairman and CEO at Sinovation Ventures. And so he actually runs, I believe it is out of China, firm that backs hundreds of AI companies. So very much like, say, an Andrew Ng, he is very on the forefront of actually investing in real world applications of AI in the corporate world. So I thought some of these answers he gave and points he brought up were really, really interesting. I would highly recommend, we'll link in the show notes to the entire interview. Business leaders of all types should absolutely read this as soon as possible. It's really, really important. But what really jumped out to me are a couple of things. The first is he pinpoints exactly something that we've been seeing in the last few months, which is we are once again at an incredible turning point in the field of AI, especially as it relates to business. So Kai-Fu Lee actually points out that he thinks we're at a similar stage today to where we were in 2012 when Jeff Hinton and his research team blew the doors off the problem of computer vision. So Jeff Hinton and his team were one of many teams that cracked the code on deep learning and really driving a decade of innovation in artificial intelligence, specifically through teaching machines how to recognize objects, identify objects. Now, Kai-Fu Lee thinks we're in the same spot, but in terms of language. He actually thinks that some of the recent developments in language AI, natural language processing, he says, quote, we're about to enter a second golden period of AI investment thanks to this. And I think we've seen that in some recent conversations we've had with some really knowledgeable people. Paul, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like Kai-Fu Lee's AI Superpowers book was very influential for me to get like a global, like macroeconomic view of where AI was going. And then he has AI 2041 was his most recent book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of those people I look at as one of the main thought leaders, people who are actually doing it and seeing tons of stuff. So when he talks, I listen. Like it's somebody I really pay attention to. So a few thoughts. I definitely agree on the language thing, and we've been saying that for a while. I've said on stage, like if I just ran $1 billion fund, I would just invest in language tech. Like I truly believe that you could just focus on that and make it domain specific, and there's just so many applications for language. So that is key. And as you alluded to, like we talk to a lot of people, a lot of it sort of off the records, like research labs, major tech companies, and stuff that we can't really get into. And what I generally would guide people is like if you look at like a Dolly 2 or Stable Diffusion, or we're going to talk about, Meta's Make a Video in a minute. If you look at this stuff and your mind is blown, like how in the world does that stuff work? Just assume that the research labs are already 12 months ahead of what you're seeing. So the stuff they're releasing today probably was in a pretty advanced stage a year ago. So what's happening is all of the sudden, it feels like in the last like 5 months, we've hit this tipping point where the AI is very, very real and getting better at an exponential rate. So a lot of like the image generation tech, the language generation tech, it's relatively new, but it's advancing so fast. And again, when we talk to the people who are building this stuff or working in the labs on this stuff, the things they're talking about, I wasn't hearing a year ago.
Mm.
Like and even, I mean, there's some public stuff, like you can go follow some of the OpenAI people, some of the DeepMind people, like they're they're much more regularly talking about things like AGI. Like they're almost talking about like these major leaps that are coming are inevitable and near term.
So
And
AGI meaning artificial general intelligence. So the
right,
ability of a machine to do everything and anything at a human or beyond
superhuman
level.
level.
Yeah.
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 Which is why OpenAI exists. It's why DeepMind exists. Like there are these people within AI who believe this is imminent and possible. And the chatter around its imminence seems to be accelerating. So again, I'm just like, I'm not looking at a study where like somebody changed it. Oh, within 3 years. I'm just telling you, like, we talk to a lot of people and you can follow a lot of these top AI researchers, and the conversations are happening very quickly that we are heading towards some pivotal moment in AI's development. Now, what I will say is whether that happens or not, and whether we even get to like sentience where these language models understand that they exist and like this thing people worry about. There was a big article in Washington Post a few months back about the Google researcher who thought their language model Lambda had become sentient.
Yeah.
What we're saying is like, it doesn't even matter. Like if we get to AGI, doesn't matter in the near term because the language models are so good and they're going to get dramatically better as the machine learns to reason, as it develops like a reasoning ability to understand what it's actually being asked and stuff. It's not sentient itself. It's not AGI, doesn't need to be. But these language models are getting so good, so fast that I mean, to look out a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, it's really hard to fathom how advanced things are going to get. And so when Kai Fu Lee's talking about this stuff, like he talks about some forward looking things, but he also anchors it back to like very practical things that you
Yep.
can do to become an AI driven company. And so I think it's really important that people understand like you may be new to AI. Most people are. And he even talks about like single digits, like the adoption curve of AI within
Mhm.
corporations, which I agree with. Like I do not think that we are very advanced in the adoption of AI at all. Um, but I think it's coming way faster than most business leaders think it is, to the point where you're not going to have an option. Like AI is just going to be infused into everything in the next few years. And most companies just are not ready for it. So I know you highlight a few of the things that he identified as like, what is an AI? What do you have to do to become an AI driven company? And I think those
Right.
are really
Yeah.
helpful.
I think that that's a really interesting point is that him leading into this interview talking about this next golden age of investment in AI development, but then he readily admits that, yeah, you said it's a single digit percentage of people that are fully using AI to the extent they should. And then you have to look at that and say, oh my gosh, like almost 9 out of 10, if not more, of the businesses and leaders and marketers listening are not remotely close to using AI as much as they should, if at all. So then he brings it down to earth and says, okay, so what does it actually mean to be an AI driven company? What do you do? And it's very intelligent and unsexy steps. He says first you have to become data driven. Without data, you simply cannot do anything with artificial intelligence, whether that's internal data or you're using a language model, for instance, that relies on billions and billions of parameters. So his first out of the gate advice is you need to invest in digitizing every single thing you can digitize at your company or find out how it can be. I love he really brings up the point that data and data storage is no longer a cost center. You cannot think of it that way. It is, in fact, your most valuable asset. A huge mindset shift is required before you even start using artificial intelligence. And then from there, honestly, I think his advice really echoes a lot of the things we tell audiences, um, students of our AI Academy, consulting opportunities is look for this low hanging fruit. Look for things that drive cost savings to begin with. I mean, you don't have to necessarily from day one transform every single thing you do to become some futuristic AI organization, though the long view is important. Look for things that just take people a long time to do and look for things that machines can do in a faster fashion. I mean, and that can include making decisions. I mean, we always talk with so many business leaders about, find a practical use case that's repetitive, that's data driven, and that might be making a prediction, you probably have a really good initial use case for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And I always love when we read this stuff from these people that we have such respect for, and they're echoing what we're advising people. And
Yeah.
Andrew Ng's same way. Like, and so much of our thinking is formed through the years of how these leaders and researchers and entrepreneurs talked about AI. And I think that's the key, is like that intelligent automation, the cost reduction, the efficiency drivers from every report we've read in the last like 5, 6 years.
Mhm.
That's the starting point. Like, you can do the big thing. You say, "Oh, we're going to become an AI driven company, AI first company." And that's fine. You probably should. It's going to take years. And it is like your data, your business intelligence, your decision making, your staffing. Those are all big things, and they're going to take a while to play out. But you can start with intelligent automation of a repetitive task now. And it might be something that saves you 20 hours a month or 100 hours a month or 1,000 hours a month, depending on the business and how often you do it. But that's a very tangible starting point. And the other thing he talks about is like this idea of for the leadership team, like vivid working examples.
Mhm.
5 years ago, if a CEO came to us and said, "Well, show me AI. Like, I don't get it," it would be hard to show. Like, you would have had to have gone and find like something within IBM Watson where you can analyze a data set or something that wasn't
Right,
super
right.
tangible. Now it's like, well, let me pull up Dolly, let me pull up character.ai, let me pull up this, like the AI test kitchen from Google. I just got my beta access. I didn't even tell you this. I got my access this morning to the AI test
Nice.
kitchen from Google. It's like, I can sit here and show you a dozen examples right now. And
Yep.
most of them either cost you nothing or less than $50 a month to use. So now all of a sudden AI has become super tangible. I think like my working theory of why we're hitting this tipping point with AI is
Mm.
because it's gotten so good so fast that the cost of creating AI technology has dramatically lowered to where you can create this very practical use case technology for very affordable rates or free, that people can actually see and experience the AI. And that is, we did not have that 3 to 5 years ago. And now it's so readily available and in everything from your iPhone to Adobe to all the tools you're using as a consumer. It's just everywhere. So it's much easier to explain AI to people and show them it at work.
Yeah, I've noticed, and we've definitely capitalized on this. It's much easier in front of, say, an audience or, a workshop to get people nodding along and saying, "Oh, this is actually important technology," when you show them, "Oh, this text prompt I just typed into Dolly 2 invalidates the need for me to be an artist to create the image, the beautiful image that the
Yeah.
machine just created based on my idea." I mean, just seeing this stuff, regardless if they glaze over at the technical terms or it seems too far away, I think the last 12 months has been a game changer with some of this.
And that's like for us, like we do consulting and we run workshops on this stuff. So like our piloting AI workshop, that's the basic premise, is you get the different people in the room and we talk about what are the things you spend a bunch of time doing that are repetitive, that are data driven.
Mhm.
And you can actually create this very tangible list of like, well, here's 25 things that we spend more than 25 hours a month each on. And some of these are purely repetitive. There's no reason a machine shouldn't be doing this. And that's how you start to prioritize use cases. So I
Mhm.
think again, it's just becoming easier to sit down and have those conversations very quickly. I mean, for us, like we'll sit down for like 3, 4 hours with a group and you can walk away with dozens of ideas. And then it's just like, well, which one do we start with? So again, I think 3, 4 years ago, AI was a big thing that probably cost a bunch more money and needed a bunch of structuring of the data. And there weren't a ton of logical use cases you could start with tomorrow. And anytime you or I do a talk or we want to workshop, it's like, no, we can have you using AI tonight. Like
Mhm.
this
Yep.
isn't that hard. Like, here's some starting points if you just want to go experience it. And we couldn't do that before.